Gotta set the mood. Ah, with my lighter.
Wholesale Wednesday. Back live. What a week, man. Freaking Q4 is coming in full swing.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
It's crazy. We got, like 15 pallets going out to Amazon tomorrow?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Anybody just joining us? If you guys don't join us every week, we go live every single Wednesday. We call it Wholesale Wednesday. We do Amazon Q&A. So if you guys have any questions at all, drop them down in the chat. We are more than happy to answer any questions you have. We'll probably dive into a little bit of sourcing and how we find brands through Smart Scout. We'll get into all the questions, and we like to expand on a lot of these questions. So if you guys are tuning in and joining, you're in for a lot of value every single Wednesday. And yes, it is the same time every Wednesday, 7 o'clock Eastern. Be there. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, just hit that like button. If you enjoy the content, it does help out the channel. And we'll dive right into it. So if you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat and we'll answer them as they come in. But yeah, I mean, just so much going on right now with Q4, and it's wild. There's, people don't understand that like October is the month. It's like the critical month of Q4.
Yeah, it's tough to understand if you're not on like a retail cycle. It's like normally, which I think that Amazon kind of is. Like you're so far ahead, especially this year with the check-in times, things like that. But what I was thinking, ironically, was the YouTube video that we filmed most recently, which was actually an arbitrage, like in Marshall's video, which isn't posted yet, obviously, but going in with $100, trying to make money out of it. It just, I don't know, it kind of gave me that arbitrage nostalgia of Q4, which is the complete opposite. Like arbitrage during Q4 is like December 20th, you know what I mean? Where that's like you're shipping out the most amount of orders. So yeah, it's funny how in the midst of all that, we're filming an arbitrage video.
Yeah, no, a lot going on, but I mean, we'll still do some arbitrage in Q4. Very conservative arbitrage, though. It's stuff that we know does well every single year. There's no issues with IPs or anything like that, because I was just thinking this week, and it's like I don't know, this thought just came into my head, and it was like the next best thing to owning a brand on Amazon is representing the brand.
Yeah, I think so. And that's why a lot of people value brand direct wholesale in that sense versus, through distributors or something like that. Brand direct, as well as obviously private label, owning the brand is, not only profitable, but one of the safest methods on Amazon. And that's the more I think that we have sold on Amazon, the more of safety of the account has become a priority. Because you have more to lose. You have more suppliers to pay if you get a shutdown. You have more debt. You have more, like there's a lot more things that you have that you tiptoe a little more cautiously, I think, as you have more to risk.
And I think that's the biggest thing between like when you first start and when you have established, one of the biggest things, when you have an established seasoned account where you're doing some pretty strong sales volume, and it's like everything we look at from an investment standpoint, from a account safety standpoint, is just scrutinized to the T.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's just not worth it. And we've bypassed on many opportunities that a lot of Amazon sellers would have probably said, I'm diving all over this. But you're in the game for a while, and you just develop this intuitive sense for something. And when something says, this might not be a great decision, we avoid it, just from a pure account health standpoint. If that supply chain is not 110% secure, if we're not sourcing it directly from the brand or a distributor that is completely authorized, and even if we're sourcing it from the distributor, we have to be authorized to sell the brand's products on Amazon. So it's like, it's like I call it glorified arbitrage, because a lot of retail and online arbitrage sellers, they get into wholesale, but at the end of the day, they're just doing the same thing that they were doing before, but maybe they're just able to purchase in higher quantities.
Right.
There's, from an account safety standpoint, there's zero difference in the two models. It's wholesale to me is with complete authorized distributors, of course, and you have to be authorized to sell the brand's product on Amazon, because even if you're buying from an authorized distributor, the brand can still turn around and issue you an IP claim.
Yeah, I point that out a lot of like you might be authorized by the distributor as a wholesale seller, but that doesn't mean you're authorized by the brand. So that's something that I think, especially when people jump into wholesale at first, if they're not going brand direct, if they're going with distributors, they're like, well, what do you mean I'm buying from a distributor? Doesn't that mean I'm authorized? The distributor allows me to. But in most cases, the distributor is not the person that is submitting the IP complaints. So you have to there's a lot of boxes that you have to check. Which, speaking of which, on that note, I was actually, I didn't even talk to you about this at all yet. Maybe you already know it. I don't know. But I was doing some research today on some things, and supplements category. We obviously stay away from that a lot of the times in general because of issues with ingredients, because of different, things that could cause it to be a red flag for Amazon, which can get the listing shut down or whatnot, get an IP complaint. But one of the things which I was actually not aware of was that, and for anyone that's watching selling supplements or anything like that, check your products just to make sure. But it's actually not allowed to have any sort of verbiage in your title or description, in your bullet points or anything that's saying that it stops, it cures, it does anything. You can't have a definitive, like, this solves this problem. Like, it's actually an illegal thing that you cannot have. So Amazon can get that shut down. Same thing with things in the back end, like your keywords that aren't even on the listing. You can actually get shut down because of things like that with supplementation, which I wasn't even aware of.
Yeah, I didn't know, especially on the back end.
Yeah, competitor brand names too. You can actually, there's legal issues.
Yeah, I did hear about the competitor brand name thing.
Mm.
But yeah, no, as far as from a compliance standpoint on the back end, that's, just goes to show how much you got to scrutinize, your listings. And that's more of like the defensive side of Amazon, right? Because everybody wants to talk about the offense, where it's like you're stocking on inventory, you're buying, taking all these buying opportunities, you're growing sales volume, and all that's great, right? That's the focus and the goal of the business. But sometimes you just have to take a step back, take a deep breath, and really analyze things and scrutinize them, because that's what's going to make you a long-term successful seller on the platform. Because I mean, we see it all the time. Sellers are in and then they're out, and they can't, because they don't take care of their account. They aren't, paying close attention to the products that they're selling. One issue with account health, it's like, boom.
Yeah, I mean, I like Amazon in the sense that I always talk about as a business model. It is a very offensive business model, I think, as opposed to some businesses. Like, you're not worrying about, I think, problems as much as some other business models. That's just my opinion, just from seeing other businesses. But that being said, like, it's still, as you mentioned, an important factor. We should have a question in here, and we could probably speak on off of Twitter here. It says, like, what are some ways, because I know I talk about this on Twitter a lot, like, what are some ways that you might be, or someone might be like bleeding as a company and not even know it?
I mean, bleeding cash, you mean? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, that could have multiple different meanings, but from, I mean, a cash flow standpoint, it's very simple. I mean, it comes down to your receivables from Amazon, the cash that you have in the bank, and if you're wildly over leveraged. Now, it's one thing to be leveraged with inventory that sells every single month, and you're holding a 30 to 45 day supply, because that's wholesale, 30 to 45 days in and out, right? But if you're sitting on inventory, for 3 months, 4 months, 5, 6 months at a time, you're leveraged, and you could potentially be be bleeding cash. And if you're not paying attention to your buying decisions, you could be in the red, so it all comes down to strategic buying and managing cash flow. I mean, profit is important, but cash flow is everything. We say it all the time,
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that I was going to note like all the crazy fee changes that we've had in 2024. And if you're not watching now more than ever, I think that looking at things on a SKU to SKU basis is huge. Managing your cash and managing your profit per ASIN, basically like scrutinizing everything, because Amazon's one of those things it's like if you got a credit card that's on an auto subscription to something. I know I'm terrible with this, right? Like it'll be a year and I didn't even know I was getting charged, right? And then I'll subscribe to Rocket Money and then I'll pay for the subscription to Rocket Money to get rid of the other things, and I'll forget that I have the subscription to Rocket Money. You know what I mean? So it's like I've actually done that. So it's like, you have to be really on top of it, because if you're not, it'll just get away from you, I feel like.
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, scrutinizing those SKU economics, because, and if anybody's, has their Amazon selling account, you can just pull this up and easily look at this in the SKU economic reports. What is it? You just click on the, you can actually click on the SKU itself, and it'll bring up a graph of, all the data and everything. And you can plug in your COGS, you can plug in your variable costs and everything, and it'll break everything down for you. So it's, it's a nice tool.
Yeah, it brings up everything, which is like, I mean, Amazon in general is one of the most analytical like data platforms that they give you everything, right? So like there's no excuse not to be doing that stuff. It's just sometimes it's not a priority to us in the business, or like people in general in the business, because we're just trying to be the bull with the horns down and just keep going. And we're not taking a step back sometimes to hyper analyze stuff, which unfortunately, when you're dealing with something like this, you need to, because there's so many variables.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you guys have more questions, keep dropping them in the chat. I want to, we should dive into a little bit of sourcing, because it's been, we didn't do much sourcing last week, and we can target a brand. We can look at a brand. Why is that a brand of interest? And then we can talk about an outreach strategy.
Because,
yeah,
most definitely.
I think that here, let me share my screen.
No, I was going to say, fortunately, like, we've had tons and tons of questions that we've had to answer the past couple of weeks, which is awesome. But as a result, we haven't really done much sourcing as far as companies.
You able to see my screen here?
Yeah, I can see you there. And then while you're looking into those filters, I'm just going to answer another question off YouTube. It says, how often do you email versus call distributors and brands? So I'm going to say that in general, if you have an option, always call, but you also have to look at it on a scale of like, how important is that account? How important is that brand? How good is that product? When it comes to calling versus emailing, the key difference is that the same answer on the phone versus over an email doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. So if you email and you get a hard no, it's very binary, yes or no, versus if you get a tonality difference on a call, that could lead into like changing your path forward, because you can pick up things that you wouldn't normally be able to pick up on the email. That being said, if it's an initial outreach and it's a low priority, not a great product, like there might be more of a chance that we would email. But if we have the option, always call, especially if it's a higher ticket item or an item that we would have to convey things that we would not be able to convey over an email.
Exactly.
I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, as well said. Another question, looks like.
Yeah, when looking.
Go ahead.
When looking at our website, how do you tell the difference between a wholesaler versus a distributor? I feel like I'm going to need clarification on that question a little bit. I assume it's like a wholesaler is in like a brand versus a distributor, or what's?
Well, I mean, you could look at it from the angle, I guess, of a whole like a generic wholesaler, just kind of wholesaling goods. But at the end of the day, they're getting it from somewhere. Maybe they're getting it from the distributor. A wholesaler, in my opinion, is more likely be to not be buying directly from the brand, right? Because that wholesaler might be getting it from a distributor who's then selling it, either retail or further B2B. So the key terms here are authorized distributor. And if the source of inventory is anything less than that, outside the brand, then you walk away. I mean, it's very simple. But yeah, I mean, as far as difference between a brand and its distributor, a brand is, you're buying directly from the brand. The brand is the rights owner. They have the rights to the manufacturing. Maybe they are the manufacturer, and then they sell to the authorized distributor, who then sells to you, or they sell to you, who then sells to the customer. Clarification here. If the general preference is to work with distributors, then how can I tell that they're buying directly from the brand?
The brand, and you ask them. It's one
Yeah.
option. I mean,
Yeah, you go directly to the brand. So like option one, it's the best option, is you go directly to the brand and you ask them for a list of authorized distributors, or you just flat out ask them and say, hey, is this distributor authorized? And the chances are they'll be more than happy to answer the question because they want you to buy from their distributors. Option two is if you don't want to go to the brand directly to get that list, or if they're unwilling to provide that list, which I find unlikely, you just simply get an invoice from the distributor. You verify that they have some sort of redacted documentation of an agreement with the brand that they're buying directly from. So, you go through a couple of steps to make sure and take the extra measure that they are authorized. That being said, like we said in the beginning, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're authorized to sell their products on Amazon. Just because they're an authorized distributor, doesn't alleviate you from from an intellectual property complaint risk.
Yeah, the other thing it says in here, actually, off of that, you guys only work with brands, only work direct with brands. So, I mean, mostly, not entirely, but mostly. I mean, even in the like distributors that we do work with, it's a very small amount, and it's also smaller distributors. So, and those distributors are all either, manufacturers themselves, or they're licensed by, the brand. And again, it's all authorized. So that's the key.
Yeah. So I'll dive here back into my screen share. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we're good.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you guys haven't joined us in the past, we set a very basic filter criteria on Smart Scout. Minimum monthly revenue of 20,000, and we'll usually set a maximum monthly revenue of 250,000. But you can play with this. If you want to target maybe smaller brands, you go 20,000 to maybe 50,000. But let's do like 200,000 today, and cast a wide net. We set a minimum average selling price of $9 with a average number of sellers and FBA sellers of 2. And we set this very basic filter criteria. And we do no work ahead of time before these lives because we want to show you exactly how we find brands. This is raw. So we jump on here and we just look for brands based on several points of criteria on Smart Scout. So we're paying attention to the average number of sellers. We're paying attention to the monthly revenue, the average sell price, the monthly units sold. But again, we can't get a deep dive into this product until we actually open it up on Amazon. So that's exactly what we'll do. We'll just start by scrolling here, see if anything catches the eye, and then open it up into Amazon. So just let me know if you're seeing anything as I'm scrolling here.
Yeah, I will actually let you take a look while I'm answering a couple different questions that are in here. First one, just what's the ratio of brands and distributors you work with? Like 90% brands, 10% distributors? Question mark. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if that. Most, I would say 90. Yeah, it's a safe bet, right? Probably about 90-10. Most of them are brands directly. Another question off Instagram says, going into Q4 seasonal wholesale accounts, what is the best strategy to combat the lengthy Amazon check-in times for both small parcel and LTL? Is to send your stuff in early, to use 2D barcodes, and to accurately project things, right? Like, there's unfortunately not a lot of things that we can do to really change Amazon's check-in times. You extending optimized workflows has helped a little bit, but right now, I mean, it's been worse than ever, I'd say, early in the season, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's definitely something to keep in mind, just sending that inventory in early, because once it's too late, like it's too late. A question here off YouTube says, when it's starting with wholesale, do you recommend distributors first and then brands, or what? So distributors and brands are good in different ways, but they're different. So distributors is generally a lower barrier to entry. And what I mean by that is, like, a distributor, their job is to sell you product. Like, that's what they want to do. That's how they make their money. And so going in with a lower like skill set, it's easier to lock down a distributor account, I think, than a brand direct account initially. That doesn't mean it's going to be profitable. It doesn't mean it's going to be more lucrative. It's just going to be easier to get your foot in the door in a lot of cases, because money talks with them. Or if you're looking from the perspective of trying to develop a relationship, and that's what you're better at, and having a skill set to back it up, and doing a lot of studying, and like understanding, consuming our content, consuming content from like Corey Gainham, guys that are doing brand direct wholesale content, to learn how to do that, then I suggest going with that. And it also might be a lower MOQ, lower minimum order. So it's totally up to you. They're both good. They're just different. Just make sure that they're authorized. And then other question here, what software do you guys use for shipping? So software is for shipping. Inventory Lab is, a workflow that we like. We also like directly, believe it or not, using Seller Central. We also like Boxem. Like, the whole thing that's kind of thrown a wrench in things this year is the difference between the shipping charges and the inbound fees, right? So at this point, a lot of these third-party shipping softwares like do not allow you to tell the difference between like right up front, the estimations between like inbound fees. So we like to see that workflow. So actually, that's why at this point we have used a lot of the Seller Central inbound flow. But in addition to, like I said, Inventory Lab, Box, and things like that, that allow you to have 2D barcodes and things of that nature. Question here off of Instagram, opinions on tactical arbitrage. I used it for a very long time, way at the beginning. Did you ever use tactical arbitrage?
I think I got an account, but I never.
Oh yeah, man. I used it for a long time, way at the beginning, doing OA and RA. I think it's an incredibly powerful software. I mean, it's amazing. And I think that if you're doing OA, I'm not really up to date on what people are using in online arbitrage these days, but I know we made a killing off of that back in the day when I was using it. So. And then we got a couple other ones here. Says my family has a wholesale store, so a brick and mortar. So probably going to be easy to open an account with brands and distributors, but I'm looking for good authorized distributors. What monthly revenue do you recommend? Do you have any sort of gauge on that? I'm assuming you're a beginner,
Yeah. So what monthly revenue on Smart Scout? Well, usually, like we were just showing on the brands tab in the filter criteria, we'll target anywhere from 20,000 to 250,000 that'll cast a wide enough net, to really have our small to medium sized brands. You got to keep in mind brands doing $250,000 a month. Even if you get a fraction of that, you're in pretty good shape. And then if you can convince it into an exclusive, that could be a real winner. But if you do have a brick and mortar store, a clothing store, I'm not in love with the clothing category on Amazon. I think there's a little bit of opportunity in it depending on which segment of the clothing category, but apparel as a whole is just higher returns rate. Shoes is an absolute no for us at this point in the game, even though that was your what do you call it? Your pioneering days.
Yeah.
That's Brandon could talk all day about shoes, but we did shoes, we did all kinds of shoes. It's just not, it's not worth it with the returns and everything. But that clothing store could help you close accounts, not just in apparel, not just in clothing. It could be
100% sports and outdoors.
Exactly.
Yeah, tons of stuff. So we tried to get into sourcing. What software do you guys use?
This question from Scott here on Twitter.
Okay.
Did you get that one, Scott?
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Yeah. So I'll just read it. You can answer it. If I'm managing a brand listing building optimization as a secondary user on their account, so brand registry, I sell their products on my account. Is it safe in the eyes of Amazon? What are the best practices? They don't sell their own products, but want ownership of the listings, etc. Okay, so I'm translating. They have their own Seller Central account. They have, they're the owners of brand registry as well, or they don't have their own Seller Central account, but they have their own brand registry account. But you are an authorized user on the brand registry. Is that safe in the eyes of Amazon? What are the best practices?
Yeah, that's absolutely safe in the eyes of Amazon. You can do it a couple ways, so if that brand has an Amazon selling account set up, they have a brand registry set up, they can grant you permissions as an authorized user, which it sounds like they've done. You can either do that in your same information as your selling account on the brand registry. So if they have a brand registry presence and you are making changes to the listing in your selling account, you're going to want the email and information in the brand registry to be the same as the email and information that is making the changes in the Seller Central. So if it's your Seller Central that you're making the changes in, have them grant you the brand registry in your Seller Central information.
Mm-hmm.
If they have a selling account and you are managing inside of their selling account and making listing changes and edits inside of their selling account, I actually would not recommend putting it in the same email and information as your selling account. It's got to be a separate account that they send an invitation to, because there could be some overlap there. Not that it's going to shut you down or anything, but you're better off taking that extra step of precaution.
Yeah, you don't want any sort of commingling issues or anything on it. But it's such a avoidable thing, So just be careful when it comes to that. But in general, no. I mean, no issue at all. Amazon refers to third-party sellers helping brands as agencies a lot of the times, and they say like if you're an agency for a brand, and that's really all it is. We jump into the next one here, actually off of Instagram. Says, what are your tips for someone who's going through their first Q4, both wholesale and RA?
First Q4. No, it's an exciting time. I would just say at this point in the game, buy inventory, but don't go crazy. I wouldn't say Q4 everything sells. Look at Keepa charts in the past. Analyze the trends of Keepa charts, and don't go crazy to the point where you're sitting on inventory. Get those sales and then use the data that you gain from this year to blow it out of the park next year.
Yeah.
You know, because every year we seemingly come back to our suppliers, we buy X amount of inventory from our suppliers, and then we come back and we double our orders the year after, and we're 5 years in the game. You know, so it's like everything sells in Q4, but we still buy the inventory that's, you know, seemingly going to last us until the end of Q4, even though many times we sell out early. You know, it's just the name of the game. It's very difficult.
Most of the time, actually. Most of the time. Yeah. I mean, which, you know, in terms of the cash flow cycle, it's not a bad thing, but you kind of get that FOMO where it's like, you know, I should have ordered more. But at the same time, we say that every year, and then every year the same thing happens. So, yeah, it is what it is. But I think that's great advice. I think don't go over the top. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with all your stuff selling as long as you've done the product research. So Jacob in here says, emailing big brands right now to ask for an account, but if they don't reply, I will call a week later. I think it's a good strategy. I mean, I think when you say big brands, right, like the whole key to what we do is we have to get a decision maker on the phone, and I'm not going to call up Coca-Cola and talk to the CEO, right? So you have to target brands in your sourcing strategy that allow an email or a phone call to even be worthwhile, because there's some accounts, no matter how much you call or email, you're never going to get a hold of the owner or a decision maker. And that's why distributors exist. So.
Yep.
Question here says, what softwares do you guys use to run your business? Yeah, do that one.
I'm scrolling on Smart Scout trying to find a couple brands.
yeah. Why don't you just? I'll just keep answering your question. Once you got something, interrupt me. Let me know. I'll just keep answering it. So softwares we use a lot for a lot of different things. We really like Smart Scout. Obviously, we like AMZ Scout for sales velocities. We have obviously Keeper Pro, using a count stock extension, as well as how many for stock of products. I don't know if I'm missing anything. DS Quick View, obviously, viewing products. What else? Loom. What is that?
Which is free.
Yeah. Loom to send videos to brands is huge. As opposed to just like typing out an email or something like that. Being able to send a face-to-face, basically like what we're doing now, to a brand is big. I think that's about it. We've kind of like tapered down some of the extensions over time. So the ones we really like. I could be missing a couple. But that's pretty much what we use. Another question here off YouTube says, how do you organize outreach? Should I make a Google Doc with brands, date, outreach, response, and call, etc.? Brad and I both do this a little differently. So you have to just kind of find out what works for you. He has, everything in like a Google Sheet type of deal, where there is, he's using the dinosaur method. Dinosaur ages, where he has reminders, which is very effective for him. And I make fun of that because like you need to do what works for you. Like what I did, that method too, it didn't really work for me. So I switched to something else. But his reminders set up with his follow-up calls and things like that he makes to the brands that we're reaching out to. I have mine in a CRM where I have different stages to my CRM, where I don't necessarily have a reminder unless it's a really high important call where I'll put it on my calendar, but I don't have a reminder necessarily. It's just depending on what stages are in the CRM. I know if I have to reach out again or not. So you really have to just do what works for you. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to it. It just has to be effective. It says in here, is there any guides on the back end process after you lock down a brand, the whole brand registry process, or even authorizing you to sell? It's a really good question. Actually, we don't talk about that too much. We talk about basically how to how to wind up getting the brand versus, I think, taking care of the relationship is big too. And so in that case, I think it depends on what the expectations were that were set up at the beginning of the relationship. I think that sometimes in a lot of cases, we're getting brand registry long before we've received an exclusive agreement in most cases. And it's because we're using that to build that relationship up. So I think you have to do it based on the expectations that you set with the brand owner as far as what you need to do. I mean, we have accounts that to be honest with you, we haven't done much because the brand owner didn't want much and there wasn't really expectations that were set by them because they just wanted representation. They didn't necessarily want improvement on listings. They didn't want, ads. They didn't want any of those things. They just wanted someone to protect their product. Versus there's brands that we go into where they want PPC. They want, results sent to them, quarterly reports, things like that. So tons of different situations, really a case by case situation. How long does the brand registry process take? Just trying to see if it's worth it right now to lock down a brand since December is going to be a crazy month. The brand registry process, you get that invite immediately and then it'll update within 15 minutes if you accept it. It's more so just getting a brand on board with that. And the point of brand registry is, yes, to be able to make changes to listings and stuff, but it's also just to build the trust of that, brand owner and develop that relationship and start working with them on doing things. So I think you should go for it regardless.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that the brand needs a trademark in order to enroll in Amazon brand registry. And if they don't have a trademark, you have to, if the brand wants to enroll in the IP Accelerator program, which is going to get all that up and running far quicker than if you were to wait for a standard trademark. It costs a little bit more. It's like $1,500, but it's well worth it because you're going to save about a year of time having to wait, for the standard trademark.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I'm still sharing my screen here, and I got some different products up here that I've, just been kind of scrolling and looking through as we're, talking about the questions. But I think one thing that illustrates like how we identify some different brands is, when we look at a listing like this versus, say, if we look at a listing like this, right? At a first glance, what are a couple things, from an outreach standpoint where it's like, all right, this is something of interest, this is not something of interest, or vice versa with like
I was going to say I think we're looking at different things. Yeah, the other way around for sure. I mean, this first, the one you're on right now, this golden brand here is definitely of interest. I mean, I didn't see the sellers necessarily yet or the Keepa, but we're looking for like bad representation. We're looking for a brand that we can call and we have things that we can say. We have ammunition to face the rejection that we're ultimately going to face in most cases. And looking at this listing, we have a lot of ammunition. Do you want to go into more of that on like what I mean by that?
Yeah, and you mentioned bad representation.
Mm-hmm.
So when Brandon says bad representation, he's just talking about the appearance of the brand and the listings. So it's like when we compare something like this to something like this, the first thing and the most obvious thing is the images. Because on a listing like this, the images are very good. The product is big. It's right there, crystal clear for the customer. It's got infographics pointing out the different aspects of the product. It's got lifestyle photography. It's got 2 videos, so all different things that we would use to pitch a brand on. Whereas with something like this, it really doesn't have anything. There's 2 images, and this image, I don't know if it's my computer or screen, but there it goes. Yeah, I mean, it's really 2 images, and it just doesn't give the customer. It doesn't pull the customer in, so this could potentially be limiting on sales opportunities. It could be, lacking. It's just lacking a cohesive presence on Amazon is what we're talking about when we talk about bad representation.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we look at this brand, right, but the product is selling, right? The product's selling, keep it saying 600 units a month approximately. So it's definitely got the volume, but there's an opportunity from an outreach and a value add standpoint to provide value. Whereas with something like this, if we look at this, and we're saying, hey, it's moving about the same number of units a month, 500-600 units a month. But if I call this brand up, am I going to be able to strategically position my company in a way that actually gets the account? We're going in it with the expectation of rejection, right? We're expecting the rejection. It's probably going to happen because it happens 9 out of 10 times. So how can we strategically position ourselves in a way that stands out from all the other Amazon sellers
100%.
for the brand?
A lot more difficult.
That's not to say, right? That's not to say that this particular brand is not a brand we'd reach out to. Maybe we can get a wholesale account with them and get our foot in the door. Just because their listings are well optimized doesn't mean we can't sell the product on a transactional level. Yeah. So like when you're a brand new beginner, our focus is going to be to just get the products into our inventory so that we can secure the wholesale account, so that we can potentially add value to them down the road. Whereas, as you grow, maybe you're more selective and, you might target brands that you can actually add value to right off the bat. And that's really how we approach it.
Yeah. 2 questions in here off Instagram, which actually one of them kind of relates to what I'm talking or what you're talking about here. It says, you run ads for these brands or no? And I think that kind of all, the reason I say it ties in is because I was going to mention that there's always usually something that you can point to towards a brand. Like on that last listing that you were just looking at, there was I think it was an Amazon Basics, but there was an ad that was running at the bottom of their listing, right? So, you can approach it from an offensive perspective, saying like, hey, we can, if it makes sense to, on a transactional basis, talk about ads, talk about different things like that. So there's always kind of something. Yeah, there you go. So there's always something to bring up as a point when you're talking to these brands. But the question says, do you run ads for these brands or no? I think, again, it's case by case. It depends on what your expectations are that you set out with the brand owner, and like what your distribution agreement / seller agreement with them looks like. And sometimes, some cases we do. Other question here, definitely more of like a granular type of question, says, is it worth attempting to get transparency with a company if it's only a seasonal product, especially Q4? What do you think on that?
What was the question?
Is it worth it attempting to get transparency with a company if they only have a seasonal product, especially in Q4?
You want me to answer the transparency question?
I don't know. I mean, it's you can answer it.
Anybody watching who doesn't know, Brandon is a transparency insider. He's made a lot of connections with the transparency program at Amazon, and we have some really good connections with some high up people at the program. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it back to you on this question to let you answer it.
Yeah, I think transparency is worth it if you have a valid reason to. I think if there's counterfeits, I mean, if it's a seasonal product, it still moves the product, especially seasonally. So it's like, if the prominent issue is something like counterfeits or something like that, where you are facing those same issues and they just go up in Q4 because it's a seasonal product or whenever the product sells, I think that it's a valid reason to, enroll in transparency. I don't think that it's necessarily relevant to the seasonality. I think it's relevant to like if the problem exists on a consistent basis. That's just me. So, well, you can answer the next one about brand registry then. Or no, I'm sorry.
How long does the question on YouTube, I think it is, how long does the brand registry process take?
I did that one.
Oh, that's the one.
Yeah,
so then we got John on YouTube. Do you mostly use Smart Scout to source and not storefront stock anymore? No, we storefront stock. We use Smart Scout. We're attacking it at all angles. Storefront stocking is a great method because it allows you to niche into different stores that carry profitable products. How do we know they're profitable? Well, Once you start to go through one store, you start to get an idea of the stores that are carrying, these smaller to mid-sized brands, the brands you could potentially add value to. It's just got to be, you're positioning yourself in a way that's different from other Amazon sellers. And like we pointed out on those Amazon listings, there's tons and tons of opportunity to do so. It's just got to be the right brand.
I got a good one here.
All right, let's hear it.
It's spooky season. What are you most afraid of as an Amazon seller?
Where's that question coming from? I don't even see it.
It's on Instagram.
Oh, I don't know why I can't see that.
I don't know why they don't like all the other questions on like YouTube and Twitter and everything like populate in the streaming thing. But yeah, Instagram doesn't for some reason. What are you most afraid of?
And I mean, we do everything right. So it's like, we
we're not still afraid of everything.
Play it by the book.
I think we do everything right because we're afraid of everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I think the question for us, it goes back to safety and sustainability of the account. That's always the number one priority. And anything less than that is not acceptable. So that means, from an account health standpoint, we've seen it. We've been through situations with Amazon, and no, thank you. We are scrutinizing every ASIN in our inventory, and we do so on an ongoing basis. And we scrutinize all the ASINs before we buy them. We buy directly from brands. That's one of the main reasons why we buy directly from brands. So, that's really what that question comes down to. Is
Matt said Section 3 goblins.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna dress up as a Section 3 violation for Halloween. What would that costume look like? It would just be like the notice that you get, like.
I'd have to think.
The notice with some eyes cut out.
Yeah, no, I don't even know. I'd have to think.
I've been pushing for some Amazon themed Halloween outfits. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
we could make some good ones. I don't know.
Yeah. No. I don't know what that would look like.
Matt just said it. It looks like a call center overseas. Oh no!
Why can't I see these questions coming in?
No, I have the stream pulled up on Instagram. That's why. I mean, it kind of like, as much of a joke as that is, it kind of is. It makes sense because it's like you're talking about unauthorized people, unauthorized distributors and brands, and like a lot of the, if you're dealing with those kinds of suppliers, then it's definitely a valid point. So this is gonna be I'm gonna be Jeff Bezos for Halloween. I feel like they would get you confused with every other bald guy.
Yeah, you just got to take a bunch of TRT and
what's going on over here? We got Zuckerberg getting jacked. We got Bezos has been jacked for years now. I feel like these guys are like
Zuckerberg's getting jacked.
Zuckerberg, yeah, then he was because doesn't he do jujitsu? You should know this, right?
He's terrible.
Is he? You want to roll with Mark Zuckerberg?
Oh, I'd whoop him.
What'd you want? Is that a fit? We'll see if we can get,
Oh, I think he actually got his blue belt. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. What belt does Mark Zuckerberg have? Yeah, get him in there with Elon Musk.
Yeah. There was I watched it was on Rogan when he was like, Elon was like, yeah, like I'll take him anytime, anywhere. He's like, I'll take him at like the pizza place down the street.
Yeah.
Like,
I saw that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like the whole, I feel like he's got the Bradley Martin complex on it, where Bradley's like, I'm 260, you know what I mean? It's like the same thing. Like Elon's like, I'm bigger than him. He's like, that's why his weight class is I'm bigger than him. Like I guess he did train when he was younger though. He trained, I don't know if it was jiu-jitsu, but
I think he trained MMA.
Was it?
I think it was. I don't know. Yeah, no, it's crazy. What belt am I? I'm a blue belt. So it's a question that popped in there. If you guys have any other questions, we go live every single Wednesday, and we try to provide you guys as much value as possible.
Sure, they got a lot of it in the last couple of minutes here.
Yeah, well, we make it fun.
Yeah.
That's what we do here.
Yeah.
Is we make it valuable, but we also make it fun. So if you guys are watching on YouTube and you do enjoy these live sessions, go ahead and hit the like button. Definitely helps out the channel. This will be posted back to YouTube, so you'll be able to go back in and watch if you missed it. And if you guys have any other questions, last minute questions, drop them here in the chat. But I think it's getting close to dinner time. So
yeah, exactly. Last question, we can end on this one. It says, what's your least favorite category to sell in? It says during Q4, but I mean, I feel like in general, I don't think it really changes for us. Like our least favorite categories are consistent all year round. A lot of it's focused on returns, like high-end electronics, apparel, like we said, supplements, just for regulation issues, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, we avoid all that. Shoes, groceries, great.
Mm-hmm.
Health and household's great. Beauty's great. All those type, replenishable type products. The stuff that people are going to reorder without having problems, the low return rate categories is all what we try to focus on. But we sell in all different categories. It's not exclusively in that. We sell many products in other categories too.
Subscribe and save. It's huge.
Yeah. So we'll see you next Wednesday.
See you next Wednesday. See ya.